Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss some horror. So today I thought I would sit down and tell you about some of the things that have been released on Netflix lately.
It's coffee time.
As you know guys, I'm in the middle of moving. We are moving in December. As you can see, I have removed most of my collectibles already, so I had to kind of grab some Halloween decoration to give you guys something to look at on the background. But I have already packed all my horror Blu-rays and collectibles, and it is a lot of work, so I have not had much time for individual reviews of movies and things that I have been watching lately, but I've tried my best to catch up with some new releases on Netflix, and I thought I would just sit down and talk to you about them and what I thought of them. Today I'm also going to do this video from lowest rating to highest rating. So I'm going to talk first about one of the new movie releases on Netflix that sadly was a disappointment for me, and that is Hypnotic. In this American thriller that was just released on Netflix on October 27th, we follow a young woman that is seeking for self-improvement and ends up asking for the help of a hypnotist. Hypnotic stars Kate Siegel, whom I love, and she plays here our main character Jen. She is an unemployed software engineer, and on top of that, she's also going through a really tough breakup, so she's kind of stuck in life, kind of really desperately asking for help. And you can see the translator on the clothes that she's wearing that kind of let you know that she's sad. You know, she's wearing these baggy kind of joggers, and I immediately thought of the movie The Invisible Man, where the clothing is also kind of used to express how the character is feeling, what they're going through. And you know, at the beginning of the movie I was kind of still optimistic, I guess, about the film, but unfortunately this was a big disappointment for me. The premise of the movie is quite interesting. It could have given us potentially a really cool, trippy movie with a lot more exploration of these, you know, hypnosis sessions that we don't really get to see much of, honestly, in the film. And the problem with these is that the storyline was really straightforward in a way that it didn't benefit the film because it was boring, it was predictable, and it didn't really surprise you in any way. They did try to give us some twists and turns to the story, they did try to build up some suspense, but unfortunately it just didn't work. The possibilities that they had to explore Dr. Meads, who is the hypnotist here, and to explore his sessions and what he does and where the patients go when they are under, it had so much potential, but they didn't really exploit that, and it ended up being such a forgettable movie. And I was really disappointed because, you know, knowing that this was a potentially really cool thriller with Kate Siegel, whom I love, I went into the movie with, you know, a lot of expectations, I guess, and I ended up being heartbroken. The next movie was wild. It was a wild ride, okay? This was quite interesting. So Netflix released the Polish movie No One Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, and I really enjoyed it. I even reviewed it on my channel. I thought it was a really fun, you know, camp slasher. It was kind of a mix of Wrong Turn and your typical summer camp slashers, and I enjoyed it for what it was, and I thought the kills were pretty neat. And I didn't even know that they were coming out with a sequel, and I just turned on my Netflix the other day and I'm like, excuse me, part 2. So I just put it on immediately. I had to check it out. So this review is going to spoil, I guess, the end of part 1, because this movie takes off exactly where part 1 ended. So what I'm going to tell you without much specifics is that we follow the sole survivor of part 1 in this film, and we take it kind of from there. So we are introduced, apart from this character that we already know, to a new character who is kind of like a doofus, naive, young police guy that still believes in good people. And they live in this tiny, deserted, kind of already broken down village. So we have our naive police officer and we have the sole survivor of part 1 as our main characters here. So the police is still investigating what happened in the first movie, the massacre that happened in the first movie, and that is when things start to get south. Now, what I can tell you about this movie is that it did have a lot of good things. The gore, the special effects was on point, the blood, how they did all the kills, it was just so satisfying as a horror fan. I love that they gave us different types of kills. I love that they took the basics from the first movie, they took that story and they kind of continued it in the way that they expanded the universe and they went all out with it, and they still gave us like a new perspective of what actually happened in part one. I feel like with this second movie we get to understand a lot more what really happened in part one. Now, the problem that I had with this movie is that when we passed the 1 hour mark, it got too silly for me. It got too silly, it got a bit too stupid for me, and I stopped enjoying it as much as I was enjoying it at the beginning. However, the humor in this movie, the comedy, comes from overly exaggerated characters, which is something that I really like. I don't like the easy, cheesy jokes so much. I kind of like when the fun comes from the way the characters behave and all of that, because they created these really goofy characters that actually really work, and that was a lot of fun. But like I said, when we got to the like 1 hour mark, it kind of started to go downhill for me. But it's still a fun slasher, and if you like, you know, slashers for the nice gore and blood and stuff, you're gonna have a good time with this one. And if you like horror that sometimes, you know, goes a little bit silly, then you probably also will enjoy it up to the end. And now let's move to another vampire movie that we get from Netflix this year, and that is Night Teeth. A college student moonlighting as a chauffeur picks up 2 mysterious women for a night of party hopping across LA. However, when he uncovers their bloodthirsty intentions and their dangerous, shadowy underworld, he must fight to stay alive. What I liked about this movie is that they were not scared to embrace the tropes that come when you are doing a vampire movie. Vampire movies are hard to make because there is all of these rules and folklore already involving the vampire myth, so it is really hard to bring up something really new to the table. Now, I like that they embrace some of the tropes, you know, like vampires cannot be in the sunlight, they can die with a stake, things like that. And they also kind of took some of the stereotypes. We have the character that it's a human, that he's naive, he's a good guy, and then we have the vampires. We have some older, wiser vampires that are more cold-blooded because, you know, they can't be bothered anymore, they've been alive for so many centuries. And then we have the newer vampires that still have some warmth in their heart, that still have some compassion. So all of these things we've seen explored before in vampire movies. What I really enjoyed about this movie is the aesthetics of it, the color palette that they were using. They were trying to really make a modern approach to vampire to make it more relatable, I guess, to the younger audiences. And I really like that this felt dynamic because of so many changes of location, and because we're basically car riding with them. We are in the car, we're going from location to location, and it keeps it kind of going, so it keeps it entertaining. At least it was for me. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't anything new, so it's one of those movies that you watch it once and you might forget about it. The script could have been a little bit better. I feel like the actors were good actors, but they were kind of missing kind of a stronger, more well-developed plot, because in this type of movies you normally have a villain, and I don't feel like the villain in this story felt like it was a real villain. So we don't have that kind of big fight at the end. There is a fight at the end, but I just didn't feel like it had such a big impact as, you know, it should have had. Then let's talk about another slasher today, and that is There's Someone Inside Your House. Makani has moved from Hawaii to quiet small town Nebraska to live with her grandmother and finish her final year of high school. But as the countdown to graduation begins, she and her classmates are stalked by a killer who intends to expose the darkest secrets to the entire town. I gotta admit that I enjoy this movie a lot more than I thought I would when I went into it, and for some reason that I cannot quite grasp, it really reminded me of I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think the way that the killer wants to expose them, you know, because they're hiding something, the way that they're being targeted, it kind of gave me those vibes. And this is a movie that I watched and then I started reading the book. It is adapted from a book by Stephanie Parkins, and I'm currently finishing the book. And what I can tell you is that there are things in the movie, especially when they concern to the killer, that I thought were better done than in the book. But I cannot really get into it because it would be spoilers. All that I will tell you is that the way the killer is kind of depicted in the movie is a lot more interesting and a lot creepier than it was in the book. The movie also had a lot more blood and nice, you know, gory kills than I expected. And honestly, when I watch a slasher, I appreciate when they don't shy away from showing the kills. I just get really frustrated when a movie has kills off camera. I don't know, it really bothers me, because if you're gonna kill someone, if it's not something that is out of your budget and that's why you're doing it, when you're watching some of the really low budget movies, sometimes they do, but that is because the budget doesn't allow for them to really show certain things. But if the budget is not a problem, I really appreciate when they show the kills. It doesn't have to be extremely gory or extremely blood splatter everywhere, but at least show me the kill, okay? Thanks. If you take this movie as a fun teen slasher, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. However, it does lack on some departments, like the character depth. I don't think that we get as connected to the characters as we could have been, so you don't end up caring so much for them and their safety. And when it comes to the, you know, the script and the way the characters are, it's very cliche when it comes to teenager slashers and teenage in high school and their problems. But honestly, this was such a fun watch. I did not expect you to enjoy it as much as I did, and it's definitely from the last releases from Netflix that have been horror, one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. Now, the last thing that I have to talk to you about is one of my favorite things that I have watched on Netflix this year, and it is not a movie, and it might not be 100% horror all the time, but I felt like I had to talk about this show. And you know, I don't have the time to go into an in-depth review of the show separately, which I would have loved to do. I just do not have the time, but I had to talk to you guys about Squid Game. I started to watch this show the moment it hit Netflix, so I had already binged it when everybody started hyping it up. So I already knew what everybody was getting themselves into. And this show is gonna touch you in all your feels. It's gonna break you apart, and you're gonna thank it for it. Squid Game is a South Korean survival drama television series that revolves around a contest where 456 players in deep financial debt put their lives at risk to play a series of children games for the chance to win a billion prize. Interesting enough, the guy that created the show already had it kind of scripted in 2009, and nobody wanted to buy the show until Netflix came around, which reminded me of Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, which he also had planned, I believe, since 2014, and nobody wanted to take it until Netflix came around. So I'm deeply thankful for Netflix to picking up these shows that everybody else had rejected prior, and bringing them to life, because these two shows, Midnight Mass and Squid Game, have been the best things that I have watched this year when it comes to new TV shows. The thing about this show is it is so tightly written. Every episode is created to leave you in suspense at the end of the episode. Everything is just so well planned. It's just fantastic. The 9 episodes are so bingeable because you always end up kind of in a small cliffhanger, and all you want to do is keep going. The visuals of this show are stunning. The colors that they chose, everything is just so beautiful. It is really interesting because they designed kind of the games and everything to look almost childlike, but it gets so serious. Also, the acting is fantastic. Everything was planned to the detail. and it shows. When you're watching these players go through the games, they feel so real. Like, you feel you're watching reality TV. That's how I would best describe it. It feels so realistic, and that is thanks to the characters. The characters not all have so much screen time, but for some reason you feel so connected to them. Like, emotionally, you really feel for them, you're rooting for them, and you're really intention, really scared to see what's going to happen in the next game and who's the next one that's going to bite the dust. For me, I think it was episode 6 that absolutely broke me, left me heartbroken and floored, and I had to pick up my pieces. And that is the episode of the marbles game. That's all I'm going to tell you. But honestly, the ending of that episode broke me in many ways. And I still have not recovered. But this show was so smart. It started like something small, intimate drama. We followed this man that is really struggling financially, that has a lot of debts, that is about to lose his daughter, and he lives in this small village in a really small apartment with his mom. And then we start opening up this universe. We get to the games, we meet other players, the game starts to escalate, everything that is behind the games start to be revealed, and it's such a beautiful progression, the way you're being given this information, and it keeps escalating, keeps kind of surprising you, keeps you in tension. Like, it is fantastic the way that this show was designed. I kind of went into the show thinking, oh, this is gonna be like games in which people get killed, so I'm gonna see some nice games and some blood, but it ended up being so much more than that. Of course, it's a reflection on society, the poor and the richer, and you know, what you would do for money for your family, to save somebody that needs money for, I don't know, surgery. Like, what would you actually be willing to do? How desperate are you to pay your debts? It is such an interesting, you know, exploration of human behavior. I just love movies and shows where characters are being pushed to their limits and they become some characters that are, you know, unexpected. You don't know what they're gonna do next. You don't know how they're gonna react because they've been pushed to their limit, so anything goes at this point. Alright, you guys, before I keep talking and talking about Squid Games for 3 hours straight, I'm going to wrap up this video for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that, you know, you stay with me even though the videos are gonna be a little bit more sparse. Maybe not all are gonna be really long, but I promise as soon as I'm completely moved into the new place and I have a new background and everything, I'll be ready to go with more content and more ideas that I have for the new version of the channel, I guess, or 2.0, once I move and I design a new background and everything. So just please keep supporting the channel, and I hope that you guys enjoyed to hear my thoughts on some of the new things that have been released by Netflix, and maybe I helped you decide if you wanted to check these things out or not. Let me know what's something that you've recently watched or discovered on Netflix that you would recommend me to check out. Thanks so much for watching. As always, you guys, please give the video a big thumbs up, and I hope to see you all in our next coffee time. Bye.